No, it's great to be here, and I couldn't be happier about it. And we have great content today. So let's get to it, shall we? And I'm going to introduce somebody who I've known, I think, 26 years. I was just thinking about it as we were getting ready to come on the air. And I'll tell you, there are a lot of things that you can say about this gentleman. A lifetime career, 37 years at the Publicis Group. And anybody who's been in the agency business or been around holding companies, it knows what an incredible feat that is and how incredibly difficult it is to do. And not only just the longevity, but to over and over reinvent yourself, reinvent a company like Publicis, lead the way strategically in terms of the thinking and the vision of the thing. And maybe more important than anything, I think what's interesting about Rashad is he's, in my entire career, there are only maybe a handful of people that truly and deeply understand the balance point between being creative and innovative and a risk taker, and also at the same time understanding the demands and the prudence and the discipline of business. And it's just, as you go through your careers, you will realize, I think, that how rare that is in a human being to find that balance point. And he spent his time in recent past expressing exactly that, from the book, Restoring the Soul of Business, Staying Human in an Age of Data, which is kind of on point of exactly the observation I'm trying to make in his introduction, to the foundation that he runs that takes care of 10,000 people in India, helping them get better healthcare and access to it. So without any further ado, I'll turn the microphone over to my friend and respected colleague, Rashad Tabakawala.
Bob, thank you for that incredible introduction. I wish I had some of your skill sets. They seem much more fun, but I will, leave you to be the performer. But with that, thank you, everybody. Thanks for the patience as we got started. I am going to speak for the next 30 minutes and then open it up for questions. So as you have questions, do put them into chat and Bob will moderate. I am going to cover in this particular topic about how marketing and marketers are being reinvented, and obviously, therefore, the implications on agencies in 4 different sections. I am going to start with talking a little bit about the future. I am then going to move into what I'm anticipating the future mediascape is going to look like. The third is how marketing is being reinvented because of both the future and the mediascape, and what the implications are for both agencies and talent will be how I will end. So 4 sections, I'll be spending 5 to 7 minutes on each modules. I will also in chat after each section share a link where you can get much more information if you are interested. So off we go. Let me begin with the future. And the reason we all need to be very concerned or interested in the future is because we are going to be spending the rest of our lives there. So it's the reason why it makes sense to think about the future. The other reason why it makes a lot of sense to think about the future is it's a key word that actually describes what another word actually means. All of us use the word strategy. And for a period of time, when I was at Publicis, I was the chief strategist of the group globally, which really meant I was sort of Maurice's helper. But as the chief strategist, I was always concerned someone would ask me, what exactly is strategy? I believe strategy can be defined by 3 simple words: future, competitive, advantage. That is what strategy is, whether it's individual, teams, corporations, countries. Future, competitive advantage. What will the future look like? What will people expect and want? What will potential competitors be like? And given the expectations of those people and those future competitors, what advantage will your company provide, either in product or service? Very simple. Future competitive advantage. We also know the future is uncertain because nobody can know what will happen. However, there are some trends that are rather clear. And if you align with certain trends, it's more likely that your strategy will be successful versus if you don't align with certain trends. In globally, because I know we have a global audience, but I will also focus on the United States, there are 4 big trends that are unstoppable, 3 that have been going on for a while, and a 4th one that recently began. The first trend, not surprisingly, but maybe surprisingly, is globalization. So globalization is unstoppable, and for all kinds of reasons, including the fact that wherever you are in the world, even if you are in China, but let's say you're in the United States has basically less than 5% of the world's population, which means 95% of the ideas, 95% of the opportunities are outside the United States. And even if you are only working for a client that does business in the US, the people that they are marketing to see stuff from all over the world. And you can see the globalization impact in the fact that, I'll just use the letter C, some of the biggest challenges we have today are all global in nature, whether it's climate change, China, COVID-19. The second big trend is demographic shifts. And demographic shifts significantly impact society and marketing. And usually the demographic shifts are on 3 key criteria. So for instance, in the United States, the first big demographic shift is multi-ethnicity. Next year, under 18 in the United States the US will be a multi-ethnic country majority. I don't call it necessarily Caucasian minority, but a multi-ethnic country under 18. People put out the year 2045 when that happens for the whole country, but already under 18, it's happening next year, which means that all your marketing is speaking to a multi-ethnic society, as well as the talent that you're attracting and training is going to be multi-ethnic. Another shift is the aging of America. For the first time, the United States is got more people over 65 years old than under 5 years old. And many of those folks who are 65 are likely to live a very healthy life to 85 or 90. In fact, 10,000 people turn 65 every single day. This is extremely important because the agency business tends to be a business that is young, skews young. And as a result, when you think about the fact that 75% of the wealth of this country is held by people over 50, and as COVID-19 has showed, we are perfectly capable of changing our behaviors and brands. We should really, really think about are we marketing to people who are older? And do we have old people or older people in our agencies all across both this country? Elsewhere in the world, you have aging in Europe, but you have youth in places like India and the Middle East. And these things clearly impact society and therefore marketing. The third demographic shift is the divide between the urban and rural areas. You see that in everything from the way people vote to what they basically think about whether they want to be vaccinated or not. Again, agencies tend to be clustered in major cities and in fact tend to be clustered primarily in the East and West Coast. Sometimes I live in a major city called Chicago, but people think I basically live in the countryside, growing cows. Because it's, hey, everything happens, in New York or San Francisco or LA or Miami. Well, most of the country isn't there. And so to a great extent, understanding what people are becomes also very important. So these urban-rural divide, the aging of America, and the multi-ethnicity will have a significant implication on the future of marketing. And the third, not surprisingly, is technology, in addition to globalization and demographic shifts. And technology has been around a long time. And I've had the privilege of basically working, quote unquote, in the digital world. I helped form one of the first interactive agencies in 1994, which is now 27 years ago. So when people say, digital is kind of new, well, I don't know. I was doing it 27 years ago. But as a result, I've actually seen how technology has changed. Now, obviously, technology has been around since fire. The internet's been around since the 60s. Online has been around since the 70s. But really, we entered the first connected age in 1993 with the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee. And then we were starting to connect, to discover as human beings, and we were connecting to transact. In the US, we now call that search and e-commerce, and a couple of companies that have dominated that have been Google and Amazon. In 2007, we entered the second connected age. In the second connected age, which built on the first, we were now connected all the time because of smartphones. We call that mobile or Apple. And we were connected to everybody. We call that social, Facebook, Twitter, etc. We are now entering the third connected age. And in the third connected age, we are going to basically see 4 changes. And these build on the changes that have already occurred. Data will connect to data, which is machine learning, which is going to change everything from customer service to marketing. Second is new ways of connecting. Voice is the first big interface. We're likely to see augmented reality and virtual reality. Much faster ways of connecting, 5G. And then we're going to be constantly connected to the great quantum computer in the sky, which is quantum computing. These 4 already occur in your home when you think about speaking to a Amazon, Google, Apple device, because it uses voice as an interface, it's connected to the cloud, it uses machine learning. The only thing it doesn't use is 5G yet, but soon it will too. And these shifts really impact the world. The fourth one, which has started recently, is COVID-19. And what COVID-19 did is not only did it accelerate all of these shifts and all of these trends, but it did something even bigger, which is it changed the paradigm of where the future is likely to be. And as a result, I think it's very, very important that we should keep in mind that as we sort of move forward, that there is going to be no new normal. Whenever I hear the word new normal, my stuff is like, where are you living? Think about how much the world has changed when you take everyone in the world, and we aren't out of it yet, for so far 16 months through a financial, health, emotional, and social crisis. Things are not going to be restarting, we're going to be starting anew. And that is going to significantly impact the future of marketing. So those are the big, broad trends that we want to think about and keep in mind. Now we move to the mediascape. When we think about the mediascape, it is extremely important to sort of notice that media itself is about to shift again. And so we shouldn't just plan for what the media landscape looks like today. And there are at least 5 very big shifts that are happening. The first one is what I call the mongrelization of media. By the mongrelization of media, it means it's going to be harder and harder to decide whether something is search or mobile, whether something is video or audio, whether something is above the line or below the line. For those of you who've spent time in China, when you look at an Alipay or a WeChat, or you increasingly now see commerce being integrated into TikTok and Instagram, when you basically see, most e-commerce searches starting on Amazon, what you're beginning to understand is maybe the way we are organized, both inside agencies and clients, is really for the containers of the past as the mongrelization of media comes around. And there are going to be many, many more options today than the big 3 or the big 4. In fact, if you were investing in the stock market, you would do better over the last year and a half with, Snap or Twitter or TikTok, if you had like ByteDance or Pinterest, than Apple, Facebook, or Google, or even Amazon. So there's a massive shift where you're going to have much more fragmentation than we've ever had before. So that's one shift. The second is the rise of voice, or what I basically call the colonization of the ears versus the colonization of the eyes. We are going to see much more happening in the sense of voice, and you've already seen it. The rise of podcasting, which podcast advertising, apparently, according to the IAB, went from $800 million to $1 billion from last year to this year, and is expected to go to $2 billion by 2023. You're seeing voice as the interface, both for customer service, for search. You're seeing the rise of things like Clubhouse, which happens to be voice. And one of the great media of the world, which happens to be the automobile, is increasingly being voice controlled. So think about voice as much as you think about anything else. A third is I truly do believe that privacy is going to become a significant issue. And for people who don't believe privacy matters, I just have one simple line. This is why privacy matters, even to you, even if you don't think it doesn't. You are not yourself when someone is watching. I will just leave it at that. You are not yourself when someone is watching. The fourth is the rise of what I consider to be the next massive and the last mass media left, which is the reinvention of out-of-home. Technology has basically negatively impacted magazines, newspapers, possibly ad-supported television, but has been very, very beneficial to out-of-home. It has been very beneficial to out-of-home because boards have become screens, screens have become wired. They have basically been able to interact with mobile phones, as well as highly localized and targeted. And they are now all over, whether they basically are in elevators, at gas pumps, inside department stores and retail stores. And it's the one media which actually will eventually become the mass media that remains. So think about that too, which is how an old media can flip into being a new media. And we also need to think about something else, which is what is a media company and who is a creative? We have to keep in mind that in many, many cases, someone like recently the last 2 or 3 most successful brands that have basically been launched in the cosmetic space, for instance, were not launched by great companies like L'Oreal or Coty. They were basically launched by the Kardashian sisters. So Kylie Jenner with Kylie Cosmetics sold $900 million of cosmetics in 18 months and then sold a stake in a company for $1 billion to Coty. She did that with 120 million Instagram accounts, Shopify, Pure Beauty, and a team of 45. Kylie Jenner is a bigger media company than the Super Bowl. So what is a media company? Who is a creative? These are things that we must also think about. I am in chat putting together or leaving a link where you can learn more about this called Ruptures in the Mediascape. It's something I wrote about 8-9 weeks ago in my completely free weekly thought letter. So Ruptures in the Mediascape. Now, how does marketing change? So the future is changing. The media landscape is changing. How is marketing changing? So for those of you who know me, what I try to do is I try to simplify without dumbing down. And I try to make things as easy as possible because I'm not that intelligent. I need to be spoken in English versus in buzzwords. And so somebody once challenged me whether I could explain the future of marketing on the back of an envelope. And I did. In fact, I have that envelope with me. And after I speak to you, I will send you a link where you can see a art-directed version of that envelope. And I call it the ABCDE of reinvented marketing. The 5 big shifts taking place in marketing, which will therefore change us as marketers. The A stands for what we used to call the audience. We would think about audience. The B stands for brand. The C stands for content. The D stands for data, and the E stands for enterprise. A, B, C, D, E. In each of these, there are at least 3 significant shifts that have taken place, and I won't go into any detail. I'll just tell you what some of the shifts are, and I will then leave you a link where you can read it in greater detail. In the case of audience, please don't think about consumers, think about people. If you think about consumers, you think about human beings through the lens of your brand. I don't give a damn about your brand. I don't want to have a relationship with your brand. If you're Tylenol, I don't want to have a relationship with you. I want my headache to go away. The only people who want to have a relationship with a brand is a brand manager or maybe an agency account person. Forget about it. Think about people. Because if you don't think about people, you don't understand people. An amazing company like Procter & Gamble thinks about people. It doesn't necessarily just think about consumers. If it only thought about consumers, guess what it would understand? The only thing it would understand is people's dirt removal habits, because P&G is a dirt removal company. All of its products do one thing: it removes dirt from your butt, from your clothes, from your teeth. That's what it does. It's a dirt removal company. If it understood people as consumers, it would understand my dirt removal habits. That's not smart. So think people, not consumers. Obviously, people are now participants. They're not passive. They're not an audience. That's a second change. And the third is online media is very different than offline media, because in offline media, we segment, we take large audiences and make them into small. We select a particular television program or a particular cable station or a particular magazine. Online, we reaggregate. We have audiences of one, which we build into larger audiences. Segmentation is like starting with a cow and hacking it till you get a steak. Reaggregation is when you start with a piece of mince and get enough of it till you get a hamburger. Search engine marketing is a form of reaggregation. Buying particular day parts and cable is a form of segmentation. Both matter, but the rules are very different. So that's clearly a big difference in the case of audience. In the case of brands, I'll just quickly go through them. Increasingly, brands are not built just through communication, but they're built through experiences. They're built through acts as much as they're built through ads. Increasingly, brands are going to think about and need purpose. Purpose-driven brands are going to thrive. Successful companies are thinking about that. And the third, which is extremely important for a brand, is the single biggest advocates for a brand are not necessarily just the people you sell to. I believe the biggest health quotient of a brand is how the employees who work at that brand or at the company that manufactures or services that brand feel. I believe employee joy in great ways decide how great a brand is going to be, because it is employees who create the insights, the ideas, who provide the service. And we are underestimating the importance of employee joy in brand building. C, content. Often our industry thinks too much about data. And I believe data, I'll get to that later, but we care too much about it. So we care a lot about the plumbing of how we get a message to people, but do we actually care about the water that goes through the message? We have to think about poetry, not just plumbing. That's one part of the content. The second, clearly, we're looking basically at us having to often, as marketers, as agencies, not actually create the campaign, but actually respond to a campaign that was already created by somebody or picked up in social media. And the third is, please do not forget, the reason why creativity and content is important is all of us, while we are living in a data-driven digital silicon age, are analog carbon-based feeling people. We choose with our hearts and we use numbers to justify what we just did. Look at your last 10 decisions. 7 of the 10 are primarily going to be decisions slightly informed by data, but primarily influenced by insight, feeling, and experience. If that wasn't true, none of us would have been born. The ROI on parenthood is not so good. So let's get real. And if marketers only focus on goddamn data, then get the hell out, because what marketing actually differentiates is not just on data. It differentiates on creativity, on insights, on design, on provenance, many, many things. Data, fourth thing. Okay, everyone's fixated on it. That's great. Just to let you know, I have an advanced degree in mathematics. I've run a lot of data stuff. I was very involved in certain acquisitions of our group, including a recent one when I was working there, which is a big data company. So let's assume for half a second that I have some idea of data, maybe. I believe data is extremely important. Data is like electricity. You can't do without it. It illuminates the way ahead. But once we move from the steam age to the data age, every company is going to have data. And outside of a few, very few are going to have data that actually differentiates. Today, how many companies talk about how they differentiate and how they use electricity? Very few. So let's be very careful and not be so data besotted. Yes, it's important, but it's not the answer to everything. And if it was the answer and it was just data, then all of us in marketing should just retire because the machines will do computation better than us. The other is most data we have and which we like so much is pretty much terrible. These things called data lakes are filled with dead fish because increasingly data needs to be real time. And finally, remember something that's more important than data is trust. And trust and data are not the same thing. Finally, I will end with enterprise, which is E, which leads to how agencies and marketers are going to change. I believe that Andy Grove, the late Andy Grove, brilliant, no longer one of his favorite statements in a book title, "Only the paranoid will survive," makes no sense anymore. Today, we're living in a connected, collaborative age. We have to connect and collaborate. I just talked about the first, second, and third connected age. Without collaboration, nothing happens. Without connection, nothing happens. But if you're schizophrenic about the other agencies that you have to work with, schizophrenic about clients, other partners, schizophrenic about the client, you'll end up basically being like a skunk and a porcupine and no one will want to come close to you. Instead, I believe you need to be something different. And again, I'm not in any way belittling to very, very hard to deal with mental diseases. One of them are paranoia. But I do believe that the future, only the schizophrenic will thrive. And what do I mean by schizophrenic will thrive? Every single agency and every single person today needs to run two models, one optimized for today and one optimized for tomorrow. And the model for tomorrow may be very different than the model for today. So I will leave you with that. And obviously, cultures make a big difference. I'm going to end with how we all need to basically change as people who work at agencies and at agencies. So I will begin with a very simple thought. And so what I'd like to do now is, before I forget this, I'm going to leave for you all also in chat is the envelope. But someone basically said I'm terrible with illustrations, so they jazzed it up. So it's no longer the envelope. So it explains what strategy is, and then it explains what the envelope is. So you can see the envelope and all the different changes going on in the world of ABCDE marketing. Again, it's in the chat. I will end with people. Please recognize that as we change as agencies and as we change as people, change is about people. There's nothing else. So when we talk about changing our agencies, our holding companies, or our whatever we are doing, we often do three things and we forget the other three. The three things we often do is we write a strategy, important. We often do mergers and acquisition, probably important. And then without a doubt, we do a reorganization, also probably important. And then we are ready to put forth a press release and go forth and conquer. Never works, doesn't work. I've tried those, it doesn't work, okay? And I'll tell you why it doesn't work. Because all those three are done by us in senior management or whatever. And very much like Michael Tyson said, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. I believe every board and every leader has a strategy, an M&A plan and a reorg plan, but people get in the way. We haven't factored in people. And therefore we always need to answer number 4, number 5, and number 6 for people. And what is that? Why is this good for me? Why is this good for the people in the agency? Why is this good for the client? Why is this good for me? I don't care if you wrote a strategy and an M&A plan and a reorg plan. Why is it good for me? Second is, how are the incentives going to change so I can now do these new behaviors? So often I would go to companies, ask them to change, including many of the magazine companies, right? I showed them that Instagram is what they could have become, but they wouldn't change because the senior most people continued to be incentivized on how many magazine pages they were selling in traditional magazines. They got promoted on the past, so they never made it to the future. If you show me a company's incentive plan, I will basically show you exactly how people will behave. It doesn't matter what you say, it's how you pay. And we forget that. And the last one, which is extremely important, and was mentioned at the beginning, is okay, it's good for me, I'm being incented. Now pray, how do I do this? How do I do this? How am I supposed to learn? And I'm going to end with 3 things on how to learn, and then I will leave it open for questions. So the 3 things that I would basically say on learning, and things that are intensely important, is that we are in a world where marketing is going to get more important in the future rather than less. I believe the marketing industry and the agency industry has done a terrible job marketing itself. Ridiculous. Because when I started 40 years ago, I was at the University of Chicago, and we had to import our marketing books from Northwestern. And a Professor Kotler, who I got to meet, basically said, marketing is understanding and meeting customer requirements. Today, all of these people, who I call people, but we can call customers, consumers, members, whatever, have godlike power. Think of what you can do with your smartphone. You have godlike power. We are marketing to the gods. Therefore, marketing is actually more important than ever. Marketing, because it also combines art and science, cannot basically be made disrupted by technology as much as finance is, right? Or as much as accounting is, or as much as operations are. To a great extent, this is the renaissance of marketing. I don't understand why boards don't have CMOs on the board. They have someone who looks after money called CFO, someone who looks after technology called CTO. We need to basically stand up and say, stop talking about people and stop talking about consumers and how much you believe. Where the hell is the voice of the customer in the boardroom? Where are they? And so I truly believe we have to go up and take the boardroom and upgrade our skills in significant ways. And in order to do that, 3 things. Every one of us should spend an hour every day learning. 1 hour every day learning. I do that. I get up every day, and from 4:30 to 5:30, I learn. Today I did not learn, but I actually learned because I also run a podcast. And today I had a little guest called Maurice Levy, so I learned. Okay, but what tends to basically happen is when you think about it, spend an hour learning, because the day you stop learning is the day you start dying, and also is the day when you constantly fill your presentations with buzzword bingo. These are what the buzzwords are: data lake, personalization, platform, disruption. Interesting. What do all these mean? Speak in English. You can do that when you learn. The second is build a case for the exact opposite of what you think is true. Build a case for the exact opposite of what you think is true. When you're making a recommendation to a client, recommendation to a collaborative agency, or to anybody else, build the case for the exact opposite. If you cannot build a very strong case for the exact opposite, how do you know? There's another reason why we need to be very clear about that. We surround ourselves by people who agree with us. The algorithms make sure that our Facebook feeds, our Google pages are all basically optimized to make us feel good about ourselves. So what do we end up? We end up basically believing our flatulence smells like Chanel 5. It doesn't. It doesn't. The other reason why you need the opposite case is most organizations fail because someone doesn't call out the turd on the table. We'll go back to the table, we'll be sitting around, and remember we used to sit around, something moist in the middle and brown. It wasn't a brownie often, sometimes it was a piece of shit, but we wouldn't basically call it out. And as a result, so many companies fail because their cultures don't allow people to challenge the status quo. So that's something else we should do. And the last thing we should basically do is we should truly do versus just think about it. One of the things I find mortifying, right? whether it's clients or at agencies, people don't use any of the new technologies. They aren't proficient with any of the things. How are you going to be good if you don't do the stuff? I find it remarkable, right? And people say, well, I'll be retired before I'm done or whatever. I want to remind people that I was almost 50 years old when these silly things called Twitter and other things came out. And I started using it, and everybody around me was basically saying, what are you doing? Why are you tweeting out food? I wasn't tweeting out food. But it was like, hey, I got to learn because this might become important, and my client might discover that I don't know this, and then they'll fire me, so I better learn. I got to remain relevant, right? Which is one of the reasons my Twitter handle is @Rashad, early adopter. Very simple. So you have to do it. And I will leave you with that and a couple of quick things. I'm going to leave you with how talent is changing and where talent is going, including where the future of jobs are going, which I spend a lot of time writing about because I truly believe talent is the big differentiator. And that is also now in the chat. And I will open it up. Thank you.
You are the man. I mean, that was a mic drop, and I feel kind of sorry for everybody that's going to speak for the rest of the day after that. That was fantastic for all of us.
Thank you.
Check at least a half hour of my hour of learning this morning for sure. You know, I want to ask you a little bit, about people, and please, if anybody wants to put a question in the chat, please do so. But I'll start by saying, do you think organizations understand the burden that they're going to have to take on and the investment that you really have to make in education and training?
They are starting to begin to understand that. It's one of the reasons why I've now become only that. That's all I do, right? Even while I no longer work there, I'm still connected to my old place of work. And everything I do there is built around training, whether it's running the executive training program or whatever. And that's what I do all over the world with boards of companies, with young people, everything else. I think people are realizing that eventually change happens through people. And if you don't help people change, nothing is going to happen. Yeah. And part of what I'm trying to also explain to people, which is also very important, especially with, a lot of senior people are older like me, not in every industry, but in many industries, they're sort of older like me. What I find fascinating is they find it fascinating that I'm constantly learning. And they ask me, how do you do it? And I said, yes, how I'm doing it. Okay. I said, look, I don't know code. I don't know any of these things. I'm just like doing an hour a day. I'm asking people, I'm learning, etc. And I also explained, and this is one of the most interesting examples where I won't go through the details, but what I did was, a little bit over a year ago, I was beginning to see that some of the writers that I liked, I read a lot, as you can see, I read in every form, but these were like from magazines, newspapers, web places, were leaving, and they were going into business themselves. So I said, what the hell's going on? And I kept seeing the same words, Substack, Substack, Substack. This is about 16, 17 months ago. So I very quickly basically said, let me go investigate Substack. So for an entire week, every morning I'd get up and investigate everything I could about Substack. And then I said, wait, I'm a starving author. I've written a book. I'm a starving author. I can do this too. So I started a Substack myself on August 16th last year. Okay. So if you notice, all of these things come from my Substack, but unlike other people, I decided no one would read me if I actually charged. So this is completely free. And it's free of everything, including free of ads.
Your first entry was that story, if I'm not mistaken. That was
yes.
You sent out to like the first, because I was flattered I was on the first list.
You were on the first list, and it's completely opt-in, and I did everything right with privacy. So you can only opt in. It's completely free. You can opt out. There's no data mining. There's nothing. So my stuff is, hey, you can create great content, give it out for free, and everything will be fine. But one of the things I explained is the mathematics of how I used to write a blog, which I still do. I put it back in the blog. I would distribute the blog in social media, right? But because I wasn't advertising on social media, because I didn't have the money, and because I wasn't doing enragement stuff and photographs, so to a great extent, I wasn't being seen. So I was being read by about 1,000 people. Since I've done Substack and had a direct relationship with people, every week I'm read by 20,000 people. And therefore, I explain to people why a direct relationship with customers is important for the future of marketing. Okay,
so this is going to be great. And we'll do one question here. Alan Meyerson put a great question, which is a perfect segue. How do you feel about the commoditization of creativity, or the so-called commoditization of creativity in this debate that rages in our industry about it?
I believe that the only thing that is commoditized about the commoditization of creativity is a mind that basically believes that creativity can be commoditized. What we basically don't understand as people is, hey, listen to me, please. If you can't speak truth to power, if you cannot tell a client, here's the way the world works, right? If you basically operate like a slot machine, or basically people stuff your mouth with gold so you can't speak, you've already lost everything that's worthwhile living. Get over it, right? It's time for us to basically go up and say, forget about it. That's what I would do. I still had a job.
That's right. No, and it's like, if you're uptight about that, what I usually find is it means that you don't have enough output yet, right?
Yes.
It all means too much. You haven't made enough yet. That
Yeah.
you understand.
It is
that
exactly.
to keep going, and you've got to keep going.
Exactly. What we all have to do is we have to, the future, as I say, doesn't fit the containers of the past. We have to recognize that our minds might be a container of the past, but we can upgrade our minds. We can upgrade our mental operating system, which we should. I am so optimistic about the advertising business. I think people won't realize how amazing the advertising and marketing business is going to be, not only because of the capabilities, but when I look at the young talent in this industry, it's absolutely amazing. So, and that's the reason I write. By the way, I write for the young people. I have lots of young people. So I've just put it's rishad.substack.com. You can put in your email. It won't be anything, and you'll get every week.
No, it's awesome. I think you're totally right. Like, I don't think in our entire careers, the advertising business was as creative as it's about to begin to be. I think it's like the most creative time there'll ever be for advertising, at least as far as we've been working.
Absolutely. And I want to leave you one thing. Like I wrote something 10 years ago, so it isn't on Substack, but I just want to show you something, because, eventually we all in the agency business have to keep in mind we have a customer. We have two customers. One customer we basically have is our clients, and then the other customer is their customer, which is our client's customer. I've talked a lot about the client's customer, but we may want to also, think about our clients themselves. And so 10 years ago, I wrote something, 11 years ago, called 6 Things Clients Want.
Yeah, it's just a great piece.
Okay, read it. No, it's that simple. Just, this is what they want.
Everyone,
why rethink the whole thing? This is what they want. And 11 years later, it's exactly the same things they want.
Yep. No, I would recommend everyone in this room to read that. It's great. Rishad Tabakawala, on behalf of everybody, and certainly Mirren, thank you so much for leading this day off and making a fantastic morning start.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. And thank you for Mirren, and thank you for everyone who has attended this. Thank you.